All right. Our next book in Book Raider, Drunk by Edward Slingerland. How we sipped, danced, and stumbled our way to civilization. So you could probably imagine what the premise of this book is, the thesis. It is that alcohol helped us get to where we are. And he talks on an evolutionary, I mean, he covers so many angles in this thesis. Again, he's this idea of eclecticism in answering a specific question. So what's that word that I'm thinking of so I can sound smart? It's like a phenomenology. Yes, that's it. Phenomenology. That's when you look at a singular experience and try to understand it as in-depth as possible. And sometimes by doing this, the idea is that other people will find connections from it. I've said before in the previous recording, I think that the internet is an example of phenomenology and how me, the individual, can contribute my information into the centralized databases or whatever the internet is, this great median, I like to call it the nexus. What can I contribute to it? What does everybody else using contribute to it? Not just me, I'm not so special. In fact, my information is exactly the same, of the exact same value as the next person. We put that in there and then it comes back to us. And where I'm going with that is that how the writer, Dr. Slingerland has posited this book is he provides the cultural lens, he provides the psychological lens, he provides the historical lens, right? And in many different ways. He also looks at the biochemical level, what alcohol does to us and why it worked, why it brought us together. He talks about the difference between Dionysus and Apollo and how this relates to us as human beings. Keeping in mind that we're primates, and if we look at other primates, the way that we behave, just through brief observation, is that we're able to navigate a very complex and artificial world. Think about rush hour, right? This idea. Imagine if you just saw a bunch of chimpanzees like just sitting around waiting in traffic, just like listening to music or something, like chimp music. I don't know what that would sound like. Anyways, just a bunch of yelling and growling. But this idea that we are primates, but we are a we are a strange animal, we're the way that we can get ourselves so stressed out and so sick from our own environment. I wonder if that's in any other animal species, or that their environment is being affected by the anthropological activities. I try to bring these words together, but man, they're just words and I'm not the best at them. Anyways, so this book talks about Dionysus. Dionysus was a Greek god of essentially liquor and dance and like liberty, if you will, like just being free. I think free is a better word, just free spirited. But Dionysus could also be very dark and could be a destructive god, if not respected. Apollo, on the other hand, was the god of like being super rigid and getting everything done. And like imagine a type A personality, that's Apollo. And Apollo, again, if you're too strict, conservative, disciplined, that can be problematic. And he's saying that there's a reason why Dionysus is associated to culture and art, is because sometimes through altered states of mind, and it doesn't just have to be alcohol, it can be, breathing meditation, things like that. through these altered states, we can have great innovation and changes. And he's again saying that another aspect of why alcohol was so fundamental to civilization is because when we have a couple drinks, it makes us more social. It lets our guard down. We become a little bit more trusting. And as a consequence, because we're more trusting, we become more honest, right? That's why people say crazy things sometimes at cocktail parties. And he's also saying that through, human beings have been around 200,000 years. We've gone through great changes, obviously, in that period. Maybe around 8,000 years ago, commercial production of alcohol started 8,000 years ago. So perhaps that's the reason why cities and towns were even invented, right? Beer before bread, not bread before beer. Anyways, saying that we came together this way, and but only recently, in the last 500 years, have we started the distillation process. And distillation, of course, is making heavily fortified alcoholic beverages that are more than what was traditionally maybe 5-8%. So they would drink a lot, right? They would just drink high volumes of it, but it was lower in alcoholic volume, to suddenly the introduction of alcoholic beverages that are like 40% ABV. And again, with distillation, it's safe to drink. It's safer than water and some of the other things available. But what that alcohol does to you, what alcohol does to your body, first, it starts by shutting off your prefrontal cortex, right? Because that's the youngest part of your brain. How alcohol works is it shuts down the youngest parts of your brain and then moves towards the more primitive, shutting it down gradually until it's just lights out, right? So he's saying that distillation, and also in our society, we used to be much more social and collectivist. And now with things like COVID-19, there's so much more isolation in the world. And this started probably back in the 50s, this idea of the nuclear family of, this is it, this is me, and it's just us, versus the more egalitarian societies where, everybody's kind of in the fold. And so distillation and isolation is a recipe for disaster, given what alcohol does to the human being. It takes us to a more primitive aspect of our mind. And that can be good if it's social, but too much alcohol and too high of an alcoholic volume is a recipe for disaster. And we know this to be true, right? People who get behind the wheel of a car after drinking, work parties, right? When you have young people drinking alcohol and frat parties, it could just be a recipe for disaster. And so alcohol is something that we have to be very careful of. Earlier, I reviewed Firewater, a book by Harold Johnson that was for the total abstinence of alcohol. So, he's more on going the other angle. And Edward is saying that, we'll probably never be able to remove alcohol from our society. And if we do, what will the impacts be? And Edward's arguing that the removal of alcohol will result in a less creative world, just based on patents that were released after, what was it called that the Americans had? Prohibition. After Prohibition, there were less patents being written up, inventions, than there were prior to it, suggesting that alcohol it makes us social, it brings us to pubs and things like that, but also just what this chemical does to our mind can make us more social, more freely going, and it can create in good ideas. But again, The Dionysian part is that it has to be respected. We have to be very careful with alcohol. And some cultures, such as ours in Canada, is more like a northern drinking society, in the sense that drinking is sort of like, it's taboo because of for whatever reason, the way that drinking is not as open in, say, Canada as it is in Italy. Yet in Italy, there is zero rates of alcoholism. And in Canada, North America, the rates of alcoholism are much higher. And Edward's suggesting that the reason for this is because of our relationship with alcohol in North American cities, is that it's kind of like something we do behind closed doors. It's not something we're open about. And it's not something we develop a healthy relationship around, unlike in Italy, where people drink predominantly only with meal. Well, they drink with meals and with company. It's very rare that they're drinking by themselves. Even drinking grappa is something they do, Edward's suggesting in this book, collectively, more or less, compared to here, where it's more individually. So that's another book for us. Drunk, awesome book, so much information. And again, it's good to check out books like these after checking out books like Firewater, because it offers a different perspective that can help us create a bigger picture and encourage conversations. So thank you for listening, and be sure to check out more episodes of Book Raider.